We often talk about self-esteem like it's this fixed thing, right? Like you either have it or you don't. But
Yeah.
what if it's actually something you like build, almost like a muscle? And the really interesting part is it's not really about, getting awards or what other people think.
Right.
It seems to come from, well, from your reputation with yourself inside.
That's a great way to put it, actually. And it really gets to the heart of what we're diving into today. Imagine that inner strength, that solid sense of self-worth is built piece by piece.
Okay.
We can think of these pieces as the pillars of self-esteem. So our mission, really, in this deep dive, is to explore some of those key internal practices,
Yeah.
things you do consciously,
Mm-hmm.
things that build up that real sense of competence and just feeling worthy. We're not talking about just thinking positive or quick fixes.
Right.
The material we're looking at really focuses on actionable stuff, things you can actually do to build self-esteem that lasts, that's resilient.
Okay, let's get into it then. Starting with what sounds like the absolute foundation, the practice of living consciously. Sounds straightforward, but I suspect there's more to it.
Oh, definitely. At its core, living consciously means being present.
Yeah.
Really being aware of yourself, your surroundings, and crucially, being truthful with yourself.
Useful. Okay.
Yeah, it means actively engaging with your inner world,
Okay.
thoughts, feelings,
Mhm.
and also with what's actually happening outside.
So not ignoring stuff.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
the opposite of just like going through the motions or pushing away uncomfortable truths. You could almost call it a commitment to being fully awake in your own life.
Huh. Fully awake. So why is that so important? Why is this wakefulness key for self-esteem?
Well, here's the thing. It's pretty hard to genuinely respect something or someone you don't really know or understand, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if you're constantly maybe deceiving yourself a bit or avoiding tough truths about your life or just not paying attention to what's going on inside,
Mm.
well, you're sort of chipping away at self-trust. Living consciously is about building a real, honest relationship with your actual self. Seeing the strengths, yeah, but also honestly seeing the weaknesses.
Huh.
And noticing those like negative thought patterns gives you a chance to challenge them.
Ah, so you can change the story.
Exactly. You change the narrative, and that directly affects how you see yourself, your inner reputation.
It's like trying to be good friends with someone you ignore all the time.
Right. It just won't work.
So how does this look day to day? What are some, practical things we can actually do to live more consciously?
Okay, so a few key things. One is just paying closer attention to your thoughts, your feelings, your typical reactions, kind of like bringing mindfulness into everyday stuff.
Like noticing patterns.
Yeah, exactly. What thoughts pop up a lot? What situations trigger certain feelings? How do you usually react?
Yeah.
The first step is just observing without jumping straight to judgment.
Just noticing. Okay. What else?
Actively choosing reality over self-deception. And this takes courage sometimes.
I bet.
It means being willing to face facts about yourself, your situation, maybe other people, even when those facts are, well, not great.
Like admitting a mistake.
Yeah, or maybe downplaying something good you did because you feel weird about it, or pretending you're not hurt when you are.
Mm-hmm.
Choosing to see things as they are, not how you wish they were, it builds resilience. And it builds like intellectual honesty. Both are absolutely key for self-respect.
That honest look in the mirror, even when it's tough.
Okay.
And what's the third practical thing?
Embracing continuous learning and growth. Living consciously isn't like a destination you reach. It's an ongoing thing.
Right.
And it's not just about job skills. It's about expanding your understanding, questioning your assumptions, developing new sides of yourself. It's kind of like accepting you're always a work in progress.
And seeing that as a good thing.
Yeah, totally empowering.
So like instead of getting defensive about feedback, you might actually ask, okay, how can I improve here?
Exactly. That question right there shows you're facing reality, acknowledging room for growth, and you actually want to learn. Carl Jung said something like, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate.
Oh.
The unconscious is all that stuff driving you that you're not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Living consciously is about bringing that stuff into the light, taking ownership of your inner world, getting more control.
It really does feel like the most basic act of self-respect then, saying, my mind, my experience, it deserves my full, honest attention. Okay, so conscious living is the foundation. What's the next pillar we build on that?
The next really crucial one is the practice of self-acceptance. Now, this sounds maybe simple, but for a lot of us, it's actually pretty tough.
Oh yeah, I can see that. We're often our own worst critics, aren't we? So what does self-acceptance really mean?
Well, fundamentally, it's about embracing all of yourself. The good stuff, the strengths, sure, but also the flaws, the
Oh,
imperfections. Yeah, your whole history, your personality, how you look, your talents, your mistakes, all of it. Without that constant, harsh inner voice or just pretending parts aren't there.
so it's not saying I'm perfect, nothing to change. It's more like, this is me, warts and all, and that's okay.
Exactly right. And it's
Mhm.
so important to get this. Self-acceptance is not the same as being complacent or giving up on growth. In fact,
Oh.
it's often the necessary starting point for real, lasting change.
Hmm.
You're creating like a supportive space inside yourself where growth can actually happen. You
Hmm.
can't really improve something you're constantly denying or hating.
That makes a lot of sense. If you're always beating yourself up, there's no energy left for actually changing things. So how do we practice this? How do we get better at self-acceptance?
Okay, one big one is to consciously stop denying or being super harsh about mistakes. Mistakes happen. They're human. They're how we learn. So instead of just hammering yourself, try to acknowledge it, figure out the lesson, and then, decide to do better and move on. Without dragging all that shame along, learn from the stumble. Don't just fixate on it.
So reframing mistakes as learning moments, not like proof you're a failure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another thing is accepting your emotions, all of them, without trying to stuff them down,
Even the uncomfortable ones, like anger or sadness.
especially those. We often try to push them away, but emotions are signals, right? Suppressing them doesn't work. It usually makes them stronger or leads to burnout. Just practice noticing, okay, I'm feeling angry right now, or
Mhm.
sad, or scared, or whatever, and just accept its presence without judgment. That's the first step to dealing with it healthily.
Like acknowledging the weather, even if it's stormy.
Great analogy. You don't have to like the storm, but accepting it's there helps you navigate it.
Okay. What else for self-acceptance?
Refusing to define yourself just by past failures. Your past, even the bits you regret, they're chapters. They're not the whole book. If you carry those failures as your main identity, you can't see your potential now.
Mhm.
Learn from the past. Absolutely. But define yourself by your values, your effort now, your hopes for the future. See yourself as someone who did something, not is that thing.
Recognizing the story's still being written, past chapters don't dictate the whole plot.
Precisely. And look, self-acceptance isn't a one-and-done thing. You don't just achieve it. It's an ongoing practice,
Yeah.
like strengthening a muscle with compassion.
So it takes work.
It does. A helpful little affirmation could be, I am enough even as I grow. It nails that idea of inherent worth now while still embracing getting better. Self-acceptance really does provide that solid ground for everything else to grow on.
Okay, so we're aware through conscious living, we're embracing what we find through self-acceptance. What's next for building that stronger self?
The next really vital pillar is the practice of self-responsibility. This is all about owning your power to respond to things, to shape your inner world, and to an extent your outer world too. It's about shifting from feeling like life just happens to you to being the one in the driver's seat.
That sounds good, empowering, but maybe also a bit daunting. What does being self-responsible actually look like day to day?
Well, a big part of it is consciously stopping that habit of blaming everything outside yourself,
Yeah.
other people, circumstances.
Right, it's easy to do that.
It is. And look, external factors do matter. Other people's actions do affect us. But constantly focusing on blame just leaves you feeling powerless.
Because you're giving your power away.
Exactly. You're saying, I can't do anything until they change or this changes. Self-responsibility means acknowledging the external stuff, sure, but then immediately shifting focus to, okay, what can I control? What can I do right now?
So it's about finding your agency, even when things are tough.
Precisely.
Mhm.
Another part is taking ownership of your goals and your emotions. Your dreams, your feelings, they're yours to manage. This means actually setting goals, making plans, and recognizing that reaching them depends mostly on your effort. And with emotions, it's about acknowledging them, yes, but not letting them totally run the show. You're responsible for how you process them and act on them.
Not just being swept away by feelings. What's the third part of self-responsibility?
Recognizing that ultimately no one's coming to rescue you. You have to be the main force for change in your own life.
Oof, that's a tough one.
It can be. Support is great, help is valuable, resources are useful, but the real drive, the motivation for change, that has to come from inside you. Relying only on others to fix things or make you happy, well, it fosters dependency, and that really kills self-confidence. You are your own biggest resource.
A powerful reminder. So how do we practice this? How do we build that muscle?
There's a really simple but effective tool called the power question. What can I do about this?
Okay.
Anytime you feel stuck, frustrated, facing a problem, ask yourself that. It immediately shifts your brain from dwelling on the problem or who to blame towards solutions, towards action you can take.
I like that. It's active.
It totally reinforces your belief that you can actually influence things, even small things.
Very solution focused.
Yeah. And Gandhi said, be the change that you wish to see in the world. Practicing self-responsibility, that's a huge act of self-respect. It builds resilience because you learn to trust yourself to handle stuff. It builds competence because you learn by doing. And crucially for today, it boosts self-esteem because you're constantly proving to yourself, hey, I'm capable, I'm accountable, I'm in charge here.
Okay, the structure is getting stronger. We've got conscious living, self-acceptance, self-responsibility. Where do we go next? What's pillar number 4?
The next essential one is the practice of self-assertiveness. This is really about honoring your needs, your values, and your voice.
Self-assertiveness. That word sometimes makes people think of being, I don't know, pushy or aggressive.
That's a really common misunderstanding, yeah. But true self-assertiveness isn't aggression. It's not about steamrolling people or being difficult just 'cause.
Okay, so what is it?
It's about respectfully defending your rights, clearly expressing your thoughts, feelings, and needs honestly, and setting healthy boundaries. It's basically communicating your worth to others and, importantly, to yourself.
So it's finding that middle ground, not being a doormat, but also not being a bully.
Exactly. Passivity is letting people walk all over your needs. Aggression is walking over theirs. Assertiveness is standing up for yourself respectfully.
Okay, so how do we do that? What are the actions?
Well, one big one is learning to say no, confidently, respectfully. When something doesn't align with your priorities or it's bad for your well-being or it goes against your values,
That can be hard for people.
oh, definitely. Another is expressing your own thoughts and opinions. Calmly, clearly, respectfully, but firmly, even if others disagree.
Right.
And maybe the most crucial for long-term well-being is consistently upholding your boundaries, communicating what's okay and what's not okay in how people treat you.
These all sound like skills you have to consciously practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They often don't come naturally. A little mantra that can help is, my needs matter just as much as anyone else's.
That's powerful.
Believing that is key. When you're appropriately assertive, you reinforce your own dignity, you stop resentment building up, and you build confidence in handling relationships and situations.
It sounds like confidently claiming your space in the world.
Exactly. You know that quote from Eleanor Roosevelt? No one can make you feel inferior without your consent.
Yeah.
Assertiveness is how you actively withhold that consent. You affirm your own value.
Okay, building nicely. Conscious acting, self-acceptance, self-responsibility, self-assertiveness. What's pillar number 5?
Pillar 5 is the practice of living purposefully. This is about aligning what you do every day with goals that actually mean something to you.
Yeah, I can totally see how that connects. Feeling like you're just drifting aimlessly, that can't be good for how you feel about yourself.
Exactly right. That feeling of drifting or like life is just happening to you, it can really eat away at self-esteem over time. But when you have a sense of direction, when you're working towards something that matters to you,
It gives you energy.
totally,
Hmm.
it injects meaning, builds competence as you make progress, gives you a sense of control, all vital for self-esteem. Living purposefully is about consciously choosing your path and then taking deliberate steps on it.
Does it have to be like huge world-changing goals?
Not at all. That's a common misconception. It's not about needing some massive ambition overnight. It's about figuring out what's genuinely important to you. Maybe it's personal growth, maybe contributing to your community, mastering a craft, building strong relationships, focusing on health.
Finding your why.
Exactly. Finding your personal why and then making sure your daily actions line up with that.
So it's more about the direction and the intention behind the movement.
Precisely. And there are concrete ways to cultivate this. One is setting clear, achievable goals in different areas: career, health, relationships, personal growth.
Not just vague wishes.
Right. Define what you actually want. Then, and this is key, break big goals down into smaller, manageable steps, things you can actually start doing. So instead of get healthy, it's walk 30 minutes 5 days a week, or prep healthy lunches 4 times this week.
Makes it feel possible, like a roadmap.
Exactly. It takes away the overwhelm. What's the next action for living purposefully?
Well, once you have the steps, you actually have to take them, right?
There you go. Taking consistent steps towards those goals. Goals without action are just wishes. Self-esteem is tied up with efficacy, believing you can actually make things happen.
Yeah.
Every little step you take consistently is proof to yourself. Proof you're capable, disciplined, committed. It builds momentum. It reinforces that positive self-image. The doing is what counts.
It's the follow-through.
Okay.
And the final part of this pillar.
Actively avoiding just drifting. Reacting to whatever comes along, always taking the easy path, living only for immediate pleasure without thinking long-term.
The opposite of purpose.
Exactly. Drifting often leads to feeling helpless, regretful, unfulfilled. And that's bad news for self-esteem. Choosing your actions, your direction, even when it's hard, that asserts your agency. It builds respect for your own willpower.
It sounds like living purposefully is like telling yourself, my life matters, and what I do with it matters.
Perfectly put. Purposeful action sends that powerful signal internally. I'm worth investing in. My goals are valid. I can do this. That internal validation, super powerful. Like the source says, purpose fuels self-respect. It's about that inner integrity, aligning your values and goals with your actions every day. Not just about external success. Consistently acting on your chosen direction builds that internal reputation. You prove to yourself you're reliable, capable, worthy.
Okay, we're almost there. 5 strong pillars. Conscious living, self-acceptance, self-responsibility, self-assertiveness, living purposefully. What's the final piece that holds it all together?
The 6th and final pillar we're covering is the practice of personal integrity. Basically, living by your values, especially when it's hard.
Personal integrity. Yeah, that feels like the glue, doesn't it? Why is it so fundamental for self-esteem?
You nailed it. It really is foundational. Self-esteem comes from self-respect, right? And earned respect. Personal integrity is the cornerstone of self-respect. It's that match between what you believe inside your values, your principles, and what you do outside, your actions.
Walking the talk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Living in alignment with your principles, even when it's tough or no one's looking.
It's easy to talk about values, but the real test is when living them is inconvenient, isn't it?
That's precisely it. It's easy when things are smooth. The true test of integrity is when living by your values is inconvenient, unpopular, requires effort or sacrifice. That's when it stops being just an idea and becomes an active commitment shaping your choices.
Right.
Practicing integrity builds deep self-trust. When your actions consistently reflect your convictions, you cultivate this really stable sense of self-worth.
Okay, so how do we actively build that integrity? What are the actions?
One huge one. Keep your promises. To others, yes, but maybe even more critically, to yourself.
Promises to yourself, like what?
Like, I'll work out today, or I'll finish this task by 5, or I'll make healthier choices. Every time you follow through, you build self-trust. Every time you break those promises to yourself.
You erode it.
Yeah, you subtly tell yourself your word doesn't matter even to you.
Ouch. Okay, keep promises. What else?
When you notice your behavior doesn't match your ideals, course correct. Nobody's perfect, right? Integrity isn't about flawlessness. It's about self-awareness and accountability.
So, noticing the gap.
Exactly. If you value honesty, but you catch yourself exaggerating, or you value health, but you're neglecting self-care again, acknowledge it without beating yourself up excessively. Then make a plan to get back on track. It shows respect for your own principles.
Taking responsibility for closing that gap. Okay, and the last action for integrity.
Trust yourself by doing what you say you'll do. This kind of wraps up the others. Consistently following through, especially on those promises to yourself, builds this deep well of self-reliance.
You know you can count on yourself.
Precisely. And that internal trust frees you from needing constant validation from outside. That's huge for stable self-esteem.
It's like building that reliable inner compass. Is there a way to check in on our integrity?
The source material has a really potent question. If someone filmed my life, secretly, would I generally be proud of what they recorded?
Whoa.
It's not about performing. It's about an objective record. Would your actions align with who you say you are, who you want to be? It's a tough question, but it can really highlight any big gaps.
Yeah, definitely makes you think.
You know, C.S. Lewis said, integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. That's the essence. Living by your values, even when it's hard or unseen, that's the bedrock. It builds that quiet, solid confidence from inner congruence. Your insides match your outsides. That's a vital pillar. And like Nathaniel Branden said, self-esteem is the reputation we acquire with ourselves. Integrity is how you build a reputation you can be truly proud of.
Wow. Okay, so just to quickly recap this incredible journey through the pillars. We started with living consciously, being awake and aware. Then self-acceptance, embracing all of yourself. Then self-responsibility, taking ownership. self-assertiveness, honoring your voice and needs, living purposefully, aligning actions with meaning, and finally, personal integrity, living by your values.
Exactly. And the big takeaway really is that strong, resilient self-esteem
Yeah,
isn't passive. It doesn't just happen. It's an active journey,
something you build.
something you build through these internal practices. It's not just about external validation, which can be so unreliable. These pillars work together to build that quiet internal confidence, that feeling that lets you navigate life with more integrity, more authenticity, and just a solid belief in your own worth.
It's a really powerful framework. So, for everyone listening, as you think about this, maybe consider which of these pillars feels most relevant to you right now, which one resonates, and maybe ask yourself, what's one small conscious step you could take, maybe even today, to strengthen that specific area of your inner reputation? Yeah, just one small step.
It really is all about that ongoing process, isn't it?
Hmm.
Self-reflection, exploration, and practice.